and welcome to Look Up Tonight with the Orange County Astronomers. My name is Liam Kennedy, and I'm introducing this show from the club's dark sky observing site near the town of Anza, California. This program features highlights from the November meeting of the Orange County Astronomers held at Chapman University. Our main speaker is longtime OCA member and many times past OCA president, John Sanford. John's presentation is about his hilltop residence and extensive two-story observatory called Starhome. For those of you interested in astronomical observing in comfort, this would be your idea of a dream come true. Let's begin the program with the What's Up presentation by OCA member Chris Butler.
First of all, I don't get out to do as much observing as I used to because of parenthood. However, I have been able to get a new observing partner, and this is Thursday morning, actually, and we're actually doing real observing of Diana's favorite celestial object. She has one now, and it is, I think, her fourth word is moo. Now, she doesn't have the N on the end of it yet, but when she walks outside now, everything is moo, moo, question, moo, moo. And we walked outside, and she just pointed her hand up and said, moo. And lo and behold, she was correct. We do indeed have had some lovely moons. That's what it looked like. So I do enjoy watching the moon, and of course we should mention some things about it, like the moon phase and what's going on. Now we had a full moon on November 8th. Kind of. Actually, we had a perfectly full moon, which is to say it wasn't large and brilliantly lit and all that other business. Okay, it was behind clouds from Orange County. But if you got to look at it at all, you may have noticed the moon actually blinked out of existence for a little while, faded out. That is because, of course, the Earth got in the way. When the moon is perfectly lined up opposite the sun in our sky, the Earth is in the way, the sunlight doesn't fall on the moon, you have a lunar eclipse. So try this. You drive kids crazy, by the way, for an hour. Tell them to see a baseball completely illuminated by the sun. Let them go ahead and stage moon phases. Say, make it perfectly lit up. They'll do this for a long time. They'll try to get it lined up, and their head will cast a shadow on this thing, but they will fight it for like an hour, trying to find a way to cheat at things. No, you can't do it. Your head gets in the way. The only thing is the Earth was your head for this and got in the way. Now the moon is swung around, as you saw, down through the bottom part of the month, going through to November 16th. We'll have a half-lit moon up at midnight and highest right at dawn, and then we'll go through to a new moon, okay? Now, we don't get eclipses of the moon every single month because of conditions that actually change with the moon. If you were living on the sun recently, probably not too many of our members do this, but if you looked at the moon's orbit from there, you'd see that in November, it was a straight line. It was exactly edge on. That's how we pulled off that lunar eclipse. When the moon went back around behind the Earth in that circle, it was such it could actually hide behind the Earth. It has to do that for an eclipse, because when you live on the sun, every direction away from you is the only place shadows can even exist, right? But in December, if you looked at the moon's orbit, it actually is tilted. The moon's orbit's tilted 6 degrees, so it actually seems to wobble during the course of years. The moon and the Earth go around the sun. So during December, we'll have what looks like a full moon. You can even see the moon up there straight above the Earth, but it's not completely lined up, meaning the moon will only be mostly full in those other months. But however, in November, you might be thinking, it's lined up. What about when the moon comes back around in front of the Earth, right? And will be between the Earth and the sun. It's still lined up pretty darn good. It so happens there will be an eclipse of the sun for the Earth. At that point, the moon will do the eclipsing. So there will indeed be one. However, if you want to travel and see it, it's in Antarctica. This fakery is as close as we're going to get. However, fortunately, we have our eclipse expert, Joel Harris. Thank you for the data. There will be a total eclipse, a short one, from Antarctica, so penguins will enjoy the show. But your last total until 2006, you say? And the next one is what, Libya? Oh, man. Yeah, okay. So we're just going to fake it for a little while. Just hold the baseball in front of the sun. You get the idea. I'm just teasing, of course. But so there will be an eclipse. Eclipses of sun and moon do occur about every 6 months. when the orbit lines up again. So there'll be another eclipse of the moon in about 6 months. Looking at other planets, other planet situations, again, more fakery, but you may have noticed a bright star-like object out to the west after sunset. That is the planet Venus. Venus is now crawling higher and higher in the sunset as the months progress. By Christmas, it will be very obvious. It is the brightest of all the planets. In the last month or two, it's just been the sunset glow that's been blocking your view. As Venus crawls higher and higher in our skies, as it orbits the sun, it will be more and more obvious. Now, down a little bit lower, we've got a fainter star there. That is Mercury. Mercury is beginning an apparition now as it swings out from the sun, but being in a closer orbit, not as far. It is also not as bright, so the sunset affects it more, a little bit of a challenge. Tonight, Mercury is not at its best, but the situation does improve. December 10th, Mercury will be at its highest. And that will be your best shot at seeing Mercury, December 10th or thereabouts, about a week on either side. Venus will be significantly higher at that time as it continues to crawl higher, but please notice Venus's elongation doesn't happen until, I believe it's April, in the springtime, and it's going to be much, much higher than Mercury ever can get in our sky. And again, brilliant and very obvious. Mercury more of a challenge, but please make a note if you want to hunt down little Mercury in the sky. Mars is still indeed with us. It is still naked eye bright, although nowhere near as bright nor as close to us as it was back when we passed it in the summer. I should make a note, Uranus and Neptune, same part of the sky. Uranus and Neptune down near the B-2 bomber or tortilla chip-shaped Capricornus, the sea goat. Those two, Uranus and Neptune, you need a telescope or binoculars at the very least to see, really a telescope to notice what they are. The point is, this is at 8 p.m., and those of you who know the southwest, well, that's setting. Those constellations are already headed down. The sky's gotten good and dark. For Uranus and Neptune, you need it to be good and dark. They're setting pretty early in the evening. If you want to get those guys in over the next, during the fall, you need to do it right away because they're going to be setting pretty early. Now, Mars is farther over to the east and the sky doesn't set until the other guys are already down. So we've still got Mars definitely with us here for quite a while. Mars is significantly smaller than it used to be. In fact, it's about half the size that it was when we passed it. But you can still see at the south part of the planet the polar cap. That is not a real picture of Mars. It's a computer model, I should point out. But it does show the features and phase for tonight. The interesting thing with Mars right now, even though it's small, it's showing phase, which is to say a dark bite is definitely taken out of what is actually the morning side of the planet. You can see the dawn line on Mars pretty well. I like this because on Mars commonly fog and frost forms in the morning. When we were looking at Mars approaching us and saw phase on it, we were seeing the evening terminator at the end of the day, and fog does not form until it's had a chance to cool off overnight. So if you want to see things like the clouds on Olympus Mons and some of these unusual weather activities on Mars, now is actually a pretty decent time to look, although Mars is smaller and farther away. Looking for Jupiter, we looked at planet number 4, meaning Mars. You want to see Jupiter. It is indeed up. If you are up late, rising about 1 in the morning tonight. And by 3 a.m., it's nice and high, just to the side of the constellation of Leo the Lion. Yes, it really looks like a lion, but you don't really need that because Jupiter's brighter than anything else except Venus, Sun, and Moon right now. Mars has definitely dropped in brightness to where Mars is no competition for Jupiter. Of course, Jupiter has the big 4 moons, the cloud belts, lots to look at. Personally, I try to get to sleep at about 3 a.m., so I am going to wait for a little bit until Jupiter rises at a more convenient hour, as it will in a couple months. No, she sleeps through the night. Bless her heart. She's my child. She's in there sawing lumber at 3 a.m. I like her. Looking at planet number 6, Saturn is now with us again, which is wonderful. If you have about 9 p.m., you look over to the east, the wintertime stars are rising. Saturn is a bright naked eye addition to the constellation of Gemini, the twins. Now, Saturn is well worth your attention. If you look at it with a telescope, it will look something like perhaps not quite so large. That's the joy of computer models, but this does show the angle it's tilted at. The south side of the planet tilted towards us now. Throughout 2004, the rings are wide open all night, and this is a very nice view of the planet. Now, something else is going on actually tonight, which is worthwhile. Please don't leave your seats. This is not an emergency. Saturn is actually going to slide across in front of an 8.4, I believe, magnitude star in Gemini. And I think somebody was saying this is like 11 o'clock tonight, something like this. Starts at 9:33. Looking at the clock. Don't leave during John's talk. Don't do that. He'll get you. But for those of you who are out there observing it or something like that, it's always nice when this happens because it passes through the rings and behind them. And the rings, some of them are only partly opaque, so you can see little brightenings and dimmings as the rings go in front of stars. Don't worry, it will happen again sometime too. I should also point out that the largest of all the asteroids is right in this vicinity of the sky. Through November and December, you can see the asteroid Ceres is passing through there. In fact, very close to the brightest star in Gemini, Pollux, on the 20th of December. I will reprise a graphic showing how this is going to look on December 20th, but this bright naked eye star, if you put a telescope on it, it will look like it's a double star that night, except that over an hour or two, this thing will slide past it. No way to miss it. Great chance to see an asteroid. Remember, this thing is like half the size of Earth's moon. If it was on its own, we might call it a planet, in which case it would be the world Ceres. Thank you. You guys haven't kicked me out of the club yet. It's your own fault. The Seven Sisters star cluster, talking about star things now. This is really the kickoff for the winter sky, the immediate, incontrovertible proof that the seasons have changed. This is the no, not the Big Dipper, not the Little Dipper, not any dipper. I know it looks Dipper-esque, okay? This is the Pleiades, or the Seven Sisters star cluster in Taurus the Bull. It is now up, well up, by 9 o'clock before Saturn rises, and it is proof to me that we need to at least do a quick canvassing of the winter stars to go over them, because we're changing seasons now. We're going to be looking at these stars in general. Now, in the center of all the winter stars, you can see the 3 stars in a row marking the belt of Orion. There's a yellowish and orangish star up above that. That's one of his shoulders. He has another shoulder over to the side, 2 stars below for knees. The stars down here that are supposed to be a sword, supposedly. And that really does look like a man. That was known variously as the Giant, lots of different appellations given to that constellation, but that is the famous Orion. If you want to remember it, the 3 stars in the row are the cream filling from an Oreo cookie. It's Orion. You'll remember it, trust me. The college students, you're writing that down. You will fail the class. Just up and to the right, pardon me for you, there's a V shape. That's the face of Taurus the Bull. And you can see the Seven Sisters star cluster just up a little farther and to the right, really quite small. The other side of Orion, down at the bottom, we have a big bright white dot. That is Sirius, the brightest of all the nighttime stars, brighter than everything except Jupiter, Venus, the Sun, and the Moon right now that Mars is starting to calm down. So that you can see all these brilliant, brilliant constellations and stars. Indeed, these constellations and stars, the college students are writing this down fast. Now they're going, oh, thank God he put labels on it. These are actually the brightest collection of stars we can see from our latitude at any time of year. It's no accident. You walk out on a winter night, you look up and go, whoa, that's great. It's better than it was in some ways during the summer. What's going on with that? Well, I'll explain in a moment why we have so many bright pretties up during the winter. As far as objects, you guys want to drag out your telescopes? You know what my favorite kind of thing is? It's called a globular star cluster. For those of you who don't know it, globe or glob, a ball-shaped group of stars, ancient stars, like 1 million stars in a ball. I love those things, but you know what? There just aren't many of them in the wintertime sky. In all of these constellations, there's really only 2 even worth looking at, and they're not the brightest, the nearest, the most significant at all. What's up with that? Well, if you look at page 1 of your Thomas guide, this is looking down on our Milky Way galaxy from above. The center of the galaxy is up at the top. And it so happens the globular star clusters are clustered in a swarm around downtown. That's where most of them are, around the center of the galaxy. Purple is the direction we look during the winter. We're not looking towards downtown. We just don't see the globular star clusters as much. There's a few out there, but not many. What we do see are all the things like M42, the Rosette. I'll explain what those are. But there's a whole collection of brilliant stars. The yellow dot there, the point of the triangle, that's us. That is Costa Mesa, okay, is right down in there. And most other places you've heard of, too. And because of that, those things are actually quite close to us. You notice the darkness between us and all that excitement at the top. Up towards the top, that's where we look during the summer. The stuff is spectacular over there. We can see the glow at the center of the galaxy, why the Milky Way looks more spectacular during the summer, but that stuff is farther away. So you get fainter Milky Way glow during the winter, but you get some of those really bright stars. Why? We're looking right outside, but at our local shopping mall. It's right in your face. That's why that stuff is more spectacular. Now, there are lots of things to look at out in that region. All the little greenish symbols there are what we call open star clusters, and there are zillions of them. Notice mostly populating the Milky Way. Some of the more significant ones have been called out for you with labels. These are indeed the kinds of young star clusters, not the old globular ball-shaped ones, but the younger so-called open star clusters that populate the area near where star-forming regions are. And as a matter of fact, this little local shopping mall, our local excitement looking outside of us in the galaxy, is also home to some of the greatest nebulae or star-forming areas in the entire area of the sky. Actually, the entire sphere of the sky we see from here. This is really some of the very best stuff. In particular, M42, the Great Orion Nebula. Picture to follow, of course. The Rosette Nebula is a slightly fainter example that's there. The famous Horsehead Nebula, which of course, you know, is from the mafia. When you're going to get killed, they cut off the horse's head. Anyway, there's a very famous nebula there. We'll show you a picture of that. And it's not all the same timing, meaning it's not all stars being born. There's other stuff going on. This is like a soap opera out here. Lots of stuff going on. There's also M1 up there, which is a star not being born, but a star that got trashed. This is a supernova remnant where a star properly blew up. Princess Leia's home planet of Alderaan, okay? And all of this stuff's going on out there. This is a magnificent time of year to look at things. You can see some of these pictures which were posted on the OCA website, so I figured, hey, they're free for stealing. Just kidding. No, these were shot by a number of the astrophotographers in the club. The bright pinkish rose-looking thing there at the top center is the Great Orion Nebula. The star that blew up is top right, shot by our own Bill Hall. The Horsehead Nebula, you see up there at top left, the little dark-looking intrusion of dust silhouetted against the background. Yes, it really looks like a horse. No, it's really not a horse. Important to understand that. And in fact, Orion's belt is just beneath it in that separate photograph. You can see the three stars of the belt, the little pinkish glow around one of the stars in the belt. That is the Horsehead seen in a wider context. The bright thing at the bottom is the Great Orion Nebula, seen in another context. Down bottom center, we have the Eskimo Nebula in Gemini. This is another star. It's not one that blew up, it's one that threw up. It's pulsing and throwing off a bunch of stuff as it's getting older. It looks like an Eskimo wearing a parka, how it got its nickname, you see. And then at the bottom right, we have the famous Rosette Nebula, which is another star-forming region, and again looks like a rose all around a star cluster. There are a lot of pretty things to see during the winter. We'll get more specific in the following months as we prime ourselves for this. Let's see, is there anything I've forgotten? Yes. I always forget the meteor shower, so I'm sorry about that. My observing assistant keeps on my butt about this. We do have the Leonid meteor showers, okay, coming up. The 13th and the 19th, apparently two predicted peaks for the meteor showers. What does this mean? It is going to start a round of forest fires all over Southern California, okay, it's a given. No, this is no big deal. As a matter of fact, in the last few years, they were making all these predictions like amazing meteor storms, okay? There were reasons for that. It was because it was predicted. These are trails left by comets, okay? They leave basically just junk behind. It's like curly fries in your car, okay? They're everywhere. And we bump into these trails at very regular intervals, but they thought there were more curly fries in one part of the orbit, okay? So we thought we'd see these more spectacular showers. And we saw some pretty good ones over the last few years. It's settling down a little bit now. We should see something that is more like a normal Leonid meteor shower, the 13th and the 19th, the two predicted peaks of this. Oh gosh, Doug, yes?
On spaceweather.com, there's a link to radar send out radio. One of them listens to a TV station, and when the meteors come in, they make a ping, a kind of sound. So if you're clouded out and you want to hear meteors, dial in.
Okay. Spaceweather.com and listen to the meteors. You know, I never worry about that because we got these tin awnings on my house, these stainless steel ones, and when they hit on that stuff, it's great to go to sleep by. Just all night long. No, I'm teasing, of course. But absolutely, spaceweather.com, a very different way to appreciate the meteors. One last note here. This is something I get asked about a lot. Astronomers' big concern is not the meteors causing forest fires, nor is it the sun exploding at this time of year. What we're worried about is Christmas, okay? And it's close. I know. I get a lot of questions about what you're going to buy. And over the last few years, I get a lot of people who have asked me about the International Star Registry, okay? Now, I want you to know I'm a good guy. I thought Rocky Moselle was a total crook, you know, out there just giving you a parchment saying the star had been named for you. It was all bogus. But, you know, I got contact from the guy, and I found out apparently the International Astronomical Union has decided to start using the International Star Registry's names. So all the atlases, right out the window, okay? Now, the people who got the first magnitude stars, they're pretty notable people. They got in line first. Like Sirius, Bill Gates now, okay? So now if you want to send Rocky Moselle your $45 to get your parchment, the thing is, think about what an honor that would be. We saw Tom Cave got an asteroid. Wonderful thing to be able to have. If you now you give these guys your money, you too can be featured in real scientific publications. And I just can't think of anything that would make a better holiday present for you. So please be thinking about that. We not only have the wonderful gift of the wintertime stars, but you too can have your own through the International Star Registry, and I will escape with my life. Thank you.
Thanks again, Chris, for letting us all know what to look out for in the winter skies. He is just such a treasure. I'm standing beside another one of the club's most treasured assets, the William Kuhn 22-inch telescope, designed and built by members of the OCA. Many of the astronomical objects that Chris described can only truly be appreciated when you travel to a dark sky area away from the light pollution that we all experience in Southern California suburbia. Which is why the OCA maintains this 20-acre dark sky observing site where our members and the invited public can observe the wonders of the night sky in comfort and safety. Before we go on to our main presentation, we have a new feature. The next short segment is produced by the Public Outreach Group of the Certif Science Center of Caltech JPL. The astronomers at JPL often get great questions from children and others about various aspects of astronomy. And here is their answer to one of those questions. This one answers, what causes an eclipse of the moon?
Ask an astronomer. What causes an eclipse of the moon?
An eclipse is actually nothing more than a shadow. In the case of a lunar eclipse, it's the shadow that the Earth casts on the moon. As the Earth orbits around the sun shines on it and on the moon. But the Earth casts its shadow, just like you do when you stand outside on a sunny day. So a lunar eclipse is what we see when the full moon moves into the Earth's shadow. Since the Earth's shadow is so large, it can blot out the entire moon for as much as half an hour. A lunar eclipse can be seen by anyone on Earth who has a clear view of the moon during the period of darkness. So why don't we get a lunar eclipse every time the moon is full? Well, here we see the plane of the Earth's orbit around the sun, which is called the ecliptic. Notice that it doesn't line up exactly with the moon's orbit around the Earth. The only time the moon will pass directly through the Earth's shadow is when it crosses the ecliptic plane and it is full. At other times, the Earth's shadow will pass to one side or the other of the moon, and there will be no eclipse at all. This special alignment is only possible during the so-called eclipse seasons, which happen about every 6 months. So the next time you hear about an upcoming lunar eclipse, try to find a clear sky to watch it. And remember that what you're actually seeing is the shadow of our home planet falling on the moon. For Ask an Astronomer, I'm Doris Dahl of the Surf Science Center.
Thanks, Doris, for such a clear explanation of how lunar eclipses work. Now for highlights from the presentation by John Sanford, all about his own wonderful observatory. Here is 5 years at Starhome.
Starhome, yeah, Starhome, that was the Swedish version that you saw before that we had on the screen. Anyway, I'm going to run through the building of the observatory, but the first thing was, the question was where to retire. I wanted to retire somewhere outside of Costa Mesa because you can see third magnitude from Costa Mesa if you're lucky. It's a good night. So consequently, I had some ideas about putting, retiring into a place that would be really good for astronomy. I could do it anytime I wanted, right outside the door and all that. So around 1997 or late 96, I started looking for a place to retire. And this was my short list of places that I thought I would look at. And I actually went to all these places. I'd been at Anza, of course. That was my last chance. You know, the desert? No, I don't think so. So I went out to Hawaii. That turned out to be nice and expensive. They showed me a lot with nothing on it except some grass, and it was like half an acre, and it was also about a quarter of a mil. So I said, see you, Hawaii, I can't afford this. Hawaii, sorry about that. Yeah. Then I went over to southeast Arizona, and that was like desert. There were a few amateur astronomers that sort of live over there, and that would have been okay, I guess, but it was awfully far from any civilization. I don't call Benson, Arizona civilization. If you've ever been there, you know it's a wide spot in the road with a Safeway. So that left me with Mexico, so that was next. I actually made a trek down there. I flew to Mexico City. I went up to San Miguel Allende. It's a very beautiful little town. It's a colonial town. It's in their heritage reservation kind of town. You know, you're not allowed to build a big modern building in it. All the old colonial stuff is there. It's great. But I couldn't find any Americans that had a telescope. There weren't any. I mean, I talked to quite a few Americans. Nobody knew of anybody with a telescope. So I thought, well, that's funny. You also had to drive 60 miles to go to the air ambulance where they took you to Texas to get, you know, fixed or whatever. But anyway, yes. Then I went west about 120 miles to Lake Chapala. That's another place where they have a lot of Americans, and it's a beautiful spot. Unfortunately, the whole northern sky is gone because the city of Guadalajara is only about 30 miles away. So forget it. Plus, the other thing at Lake Chapala, I was sitting in the hotel, not the hotel I was staying at, but in another one, about 10 in the morning on Sunday morning, and a bunch of Americans came in. They all had like purple hair, you know, and older guys. And they all sat down and they were smoking like crazy because, you know, no anti-smoking laws down there. And they all ordered margaritas, so I thought, do I want to, you know, spend my last 10 or whatever time I've got left with these folks? And the answer was probably not. So the list is getting pretty short now. So I said, well, I'll try the Sierra foothills. And I knew the Chandlers sort of as acquaintances, And I contacted Billy Chandler, they had already moved up there about a year before me, and they invited me up. So they set me up with a realtor the day I got up there. And they live in a little town called Springville, well, about 1,200 people, very much like a western version of Mayberry. But actually, I think most of the people from Mayberry are in Springville now. They all seem to be from Oklahoma or somewhere around there. Anyway, so that worked out. I saw the realtor. She showed me the place I call Starhome. I think it being kind of an Anglophile. I've been to England about 7 or 8 times, and I decided to name my place. So it's not just 41869 Balch Park Road, it's Starhome. So, all right, so I bought it. Anyway, where is it? Well, here I can display my new laser. This is the green one, folks, the bright one. It's right there, right at the end of that arrow. There's a little town called Springville, and Springville is hardly on this map. Here's Bakersfield. I'm sure most of you can't read the thing. There's Bakersfield, there's Fresno, okay? The mountains sort of come out here. Here's Sequoia National Park, and the mountains sort of jut westward here. So when I look north, I see mountains. I look east, I see mountains. I look south, I see mountains and an Indian reservation. So I'm pretty well protected from lights, at least for a while anyway. Anyway, Springville is right about here, and I live on a road that goes up here that isn't on this map called Balch Park Road, which is a road that actually goes to a park called Balch Park. It's a regional county park, which has redwoods and sequoias and all that kind of stuff, but it's higher than I am. I'm at 2,200 feet. The redwoods and all that start around 5,000. But if you keep going up my road and around and up and climb up, you end up at Balch Park, which is really a beautiful spot. So anyway, that's where it is. The nearest town is a thing called Porterville, which is on this map here. If you've been to Porterville, you know what I mean. In fact, the local handymen call it Orderville because nobody ever has what you want. It always has to be ordered. It's 40,000 people. Unemployment is about 15%, unfortunately. But it's in the valley. It's nice and flat there, and it's right on the beginning of the foothills. The foothills start about 3 or 4 miles outside of Porterville. And we also have a paper in Porterville daily, which is known as the distorter. It's actually the recorder, but the locals call it the distorter. So now you know about Porterville. It's kind of a funky place. Anyway, that's about 28 miles from me, and I get down there when I have to shop and things like that. But look how beautiful it is. This is a view of it's actually got my observatory in the picture here with the little arrow, just like supernovas. The observatory has an arrow pointing at it there, a little yellow arrow. And you can see that it's quite picturesque. This mountain over here is Denison Mountain. It's about 8,600. And this one's called Moses, and it's about 9,300. And then behind Moses, there's a couple of others that are around 10,000. So I'm right in like the second range of the foothills. And by the way, Monsignor Royer's place is not in this picture, but it's right here, right out of the picture, right down here. So he and I are only about a mile airline distance apart. So that's handy. I go down there for dinner all the time, and you know, sometimes I take the entree down, and other times I don't. But it's wonderful up there. Anyway, here's the spot. The people that had the house before me had bulldozed flat a big house site, but they didn't build on it. I don't know why. They built a guest house, which is the house I live in, small house, but they didn't build the big house they were going to build. So this is looking straight south down our little valley. By the way, it's the Tule River. They really literally are out in the Tules. But Springville is just over the shoulder of this little mountain here called, well, It's known as snail. It's known as a couple of different things. It's not very high or anything. But anyway, the road, Balch Park Road, goes down to the valley around there, and Springville's just on the other side of that hill right there. The Indian Reservation is down there. This is looking straight south, by the way. You'll see a bunch of horizons, so we'll go fast. All right, so now we're going to build a building. I had to compact soil out there where it had been pushed out, which compaction, if you ever have to have it done, it's not too expensive, but it takes a while. What they do is they just dig it up and they dump it back down again and they spray water on it and then they roll over it with a big, huge earth mover or something like this guy is doing here until it's hard enough so that you can't dig into it or anything, which of course we had to do after they compacted it. So this I took with my pole camera. I have a window washing pole. It's about 15 feet long, and I used to kind of lash my Olympus up there with a 24 millimeter on it, and then put it on self-timer and then lift it up as high as I could. And there it is looking down. And this is the C-14, which is the first telescope I put up on a pier there that John Gossett helped me build one day, a year or so before. Now this is, if you can see the date, it's 7/1. This is July 1st of 2000. And Jim Thorpe, who must be here. Jim, are you here? James? He's here. Jim had volunteered, get this, to come up and help me build this thing, or build it for me, or something to get the darn thing done. Anyway, we had a transit out there that I borrowed from Chandler, and we looked at the culmination of Polaris, and then we dropped the transit straight down, and then we put a stake there, and that's how we lined up this side over here to be straight north-south. So the building is basically oriented to the north, south, east, west. The hardest job we had in the whole building of this thing was right about here when we were trying to dig the holes for the piers. And I had the plan called for 2 piers. One hole is there and the other hole is over here. And we just had a hell of a time because they had compacted the soil, and it's sort of a clay-like soil. They had compacted, so that was so darn hard that you almost had to blow it up, to get a hole in it. So we struggled with that hole for about 2 weeks. We even had a motorized ditch digger that, about killed us when it hit a rock, and things like that. The thing with the big drill on the bottom of it, and you have one guy holding it on each side, and it's about this high, and you're going along, and it's going along, and a little dirt's coming out, and the other guy's on the other side doing the same thing. Then it hits a rock, and the thing goes, pew, and it whacks you. It whacked me right across, and it whacked Jim, and we were both on the ground laughing about it. Even though the pain was fairly intense. Get a big truck with one of those telephone pole drills on it. That's what you need if you're going to do this. Anyway, there's the piers, and I had to order these big, huge concrete forming tubes, and we put the cement in there the first day of the cement work, and then the second day they came out and did the slab itself. They go down in the ground about 4 or 5 feet, and the holes are sort of shaped so that they make a big... Anyway, they're about 13 feet high because they're designed to end right at the second floor level. So we can go a little faster here. Here's the pour. James is watching them very carefully. Yes. Oh, I had an architect draw up the plans. We found a local architect. He drew up the plans, so we had some construction drawings to go by. Here's the framing. I learned so much about construction because I had no idea how to do this. Jim knew how to do it all. You build the walls, they're sort of laying on top of each other, and then you get somebody or something to raise them. And it turned out what we got was a crane, a big sign crane. And then we got some local worker guys who really did the hardest things to get on the very top of their ladder and stretch up and nail the corners together. That's not a corner, but That's what they had to do. Nail the corners together so that it looks something like this once the frame is up. Well, this is all pretty standard construction stuff, right, Gary? Sure. And no, there's nothing special about this. It's just a regular old balloon framing. We had the guys, the working guys, the heavy-duty specialists come and do the floor joists, which are big, heavy 4x10 or something like that, 12, I don't know, they're big. But you can see the things coming along. This is looking north now. And here we are looking south again, down at Eagle Peak, and whatever the name of that hill down there is. Anyway, this is the top floor, and you can see that you can't really see it, but the piers just ended right there at just below the floor level. So then what we're going to do is put in metal piers above that to actually hold the telescopes, which will progress fairly quickly here. The fixed roof covers about half of the space on the upper floor. And the insulation covers the bottom floor only. The top floor I left without any insulation, just empty walls so that the heat could go out. But the roof, the ceiling up here, and the floor are like R36, R20 something, I don't know, very heavy insulation. The stairwell we didn't insulate because I didn't want the heat to stay in there. So this is looking under the fixed roof, and this is one of our craftsman guys, and Jim. And the temporary roof, we had to build something because we were building it during the winter, and it rains frequently in the winter up there. So we had to have some kind of a roof on the thing, and if you put regular tarps up there, the distance between the temporary timbers was so much that the water would just form a big balloon, and then break and fall. So I came up with this idea of using the ski barrier stuff. That's what this is. Ski barrier stuff. It works pretty good. We just put the ski barrier stuff on, nailed it in, and then we put the tarp over that. And the ski barrier stuff held the tarp up pretty good. So it worked pretty good. So here we are around February. There's the ski barrier stuff, how's it look. Now we put the metal piers in somewhere around that time in the spring. And you can see the one for the 14-inch sitting there in its hole. And they're bolted to the top of the 20-inch diameter cement-filled piers. It's blue because we had blue tarps. Meanwhile, fortunately, there was a local welder who could do a really good job at welding aluminum. And therefore, we designed this roof, and the roof is going to slide over the fixed roof with a little gap in between. So the angle actually of these forms is the same angle as the fixed roof, as you'll see. So it was fabricated there. It was brought up on a little flatbed trailer. There's Dave Bird and Jim putting it together. It all bolts together. Kind of cute. And then we had the sign crane back again the second time. And he just lifted it up and dropped it on the wheels. The wheels and the track had already been put up there, and you can actually see the end of the track there with the wheels. And I think there's like 8 wheels on each side, and then there's a track here on each side. Fortunately, it fit. It dropped right down on the wheels. Then it was a simple matter to put the cladding on the roof, which I bought from a trailer manufacturer over in Visalia. Visalia is the nearest real city. It's about 40 miles away, and it's around 100,000 now, so it's got everything, Anyway, the last thing to actually physically put up was the south flap, and it's got a flap much like ANZA, where ANZA, you have to drop the flap. Well, we have to drop the flap too if we want to look south. So this is where they were lifting the flap up. We already had the telescopes in, and they put a big piano hinge all the way across here across the bottom. There's a hinge all the way across there. And when it's standing up, it just has enough weight to sort of stand there and not fall down either direction. Fortunately, it's pretty stable. And I put little counterweights on the ends of this thing so that when you drop it down, the counterweight arms come up with the weights on them so that it's not too hard to lift it and drop it. The last thing before the bookcase that I'll show you that Jim did was to build benches. Now this is far too big for a one-person observatory, but I was thinking, well, maybe if classes come up here, I'd like to have room for them to sit down instead of sort of milling around, standing around outside with a telescope. So we built these benches, and believe it or not, they work. It works great. Last night, I had 28 fifth graders up there. And it was pretty funny. I had this phone call. They were about half hour late, and I'm wondering, well, maybe they didn't come because there's clouds or something. So I get this phone call, and it's this real staticky voice on the other end, this woman, and it sounded like she was on the moon or someplace. This would be a good simulation for you, Chris, because it sounded like she, you know, it's all fuzzy and going crackly, crackly. And she says, I'm down at your gate. They gave us a school bus instead of 2 vans. The school bus can't come up your driveway. They gave him a 64-passenger school bus instead of 2 vans. So about 10 minutes later, I'm looking down at the driveway, which I can see from my house, and I see all these little flashlights and all going in all directions. They're walking up the driveway, which is about about a third of a mile long, and so all 28 of them had their little flashlights, and they had to walk up to the observatory last night. It was pretty funny. Anyway, instead of providing a nice home for rats and mice, like we've done at ANZA, I decided to raise the floor up to make a full-size ground floor, and that's what we have here, and this is just part of it. You might see a little more of it later. The ground floor has a nice work room where I've got room to do video editing, and I have a computer, I got a library, and a table for graphic arts and stuff. So basically a place to put my pictures up on the wall. Well, we had an opening. Some of you were there. This was Bastille Day of 2001, July 14th. About half the 32 people there were from the OCA, and about half were from local types. Okay, so the question is, what do we do there? And like Monsignor, you've had two straight months of commercials for Springville, haven't you? Like Monsignor, I do things like this, a Milky Way shot, and other things, which we'll go through. Another beauty shot. Notice there's a star just kind of grazing by right there. Little star. Just an Earth shine picture. I fiddled with the color, and I don't know why it came out this way, but it's not quite right, but it looks all right. The other thing I do up there occasionally is variable stars, and I take pictures of them, and then I make the estimate off the picture. And here's the chart over here of AM Hercules, and there's the actual star. And you can see this triangle here is this one, and then there's one here, and then the third one there. But you can see that it's almost the same scale. Here's the 11.8, there's the 11.8, there's the 14.6, there's the 14.6. So with a CCD, of course, you can image faint stars very quickly. I think these are like 10 or 15 second exposures that I make on these variables. But you can go to around 15th magnitude. So you can image really faint variable stars that it's very hard for the visual guys to see. And this is what Monsignor and I are both doing up there, is this sort of thing. Also, you may have seen this shot before. It's one of my Mars images from this opposition. They weren't too good. We never had really good seeing. I think being down in the valley there. Really? Okay. Someone's playing with the lights upstairs. Anyway, we never had really good seeing, so I didn't get images as sharp as I thought I should, but this isn't that bad. And I was showing everybody who came up, and we had about 300 people over the 2 weeks of the opposition. Came up, about 300 people came up, and I had it on a TV screen. So you would see the image like this. Luckily, I did see the sweater looks familiar. I actually have 2 or 3, but oh, embarrassing. On February 1st, I was down here for Bill Kuhn's funeral out at Riverside at the military cemetery on Friday, and I went home that night, and for some reason I turned on the internet and I looked at my email, and there was a notice by a guy named Brian Webb up in Santa Barbara who tells you about rocket launches and things, and he just happened to say something about the fact that the shuttle was re-entering over California the next morning at around 6 o'clock, just before 6. So I thought, oh, okay, this was 11:30, I'm reading the email. I went to bed pretty early, got up about 5:30, got the video camera, put it on a tripod, right there in that spot, and I saw the shuttle come over, and it was still more or less in one piece. But some things happened during, and I have the tape with me, and maybe I'll show it, maybe not if we have time. Some things happened during the passage, and it just went across the northern horizon there and down behind the mountains. But there was a flash during the thing, and then there was some stuff that came out the back, and then there was a piece, a pretty good sized piece that came out of the fireball and just sort of started to fall like that, which they've looked for, but I don't think they've been able to find it. That's called debris number 6. Anyway, so NASA, you know, has been looking at the tape and all that. This is a lady from the local paper. This is Monsignor, and that's Mary Craig. She was up here from Australia, or actually visiting from Pasadena. And this is the NBC guy who came over. They happen to be the nearest people with a camera, so they came over and did an interview. And some of you may have seen some of that shot. It was used on Dateline the Sunday night, the next night. Yes, there's Wolfie on the far right. He manages to always get in a shot somehow. The other thing, I lure college girls up there. Yeah. They had been brought by their teacher. Sure. But then I just hired these two. I gave them, you know, $25 a piece, and we took some pictures of them looking through the telescope. We'll end that there.
Where's the college?
Porterville College. A big junior college, like 3,500. 6 classes. Anyway. No, it's an okay school, but it's pretty small stuff compared to Orange Coast. All right, so the other thing I do at Starhome is occasionally travel when I get a chance. And here's some of the places that I've gone. I got hooked up with this Antique Telescope Society. This is an international group of about 200 people who are interested in the history of the telescope and also collecting telescopes. And they've had annual meetings at the 3 places that I list there. This year they had it at Denver, and I didn't go because I thought it would cost too much to drive over there. But I did go to Flagstaff the first year I was in it, Pittsburgh, where I took that picture. There's a big spyglass, huh? How about that one? That's the 30-inch Brashear, known as the thaw refractor at Allegheny Observatory in Pittsburgh. And that's still being used by the guy, as a matter of fact, the guy down in front there, Charles Gatewood, does double star measurements with that telescope. He's got a very ingenious micrometer gadget that he puts down at the focus of it, so he can measure they started. It's about a 1915 telescope, one of the giant refractors of the United States. And then the year after that, last year, we went to Ireland to Dublin. We met in Dublin at the college, the university, and then we went out to Birr Castle to the old 72-inch that was built in 1845, and that was quite a thrill. And the favor, they usually give us something at these meetings. They cost enough, they should. They gave us all a framed piece with a little parchment thing in it, and an actual piece of the tube of the 72-inch, because they recently restored it, and the old telescope they cut up in pieces. So they gave us all a little framed piece of the 72-inch telescope. So if you come to Starhome, you'll see that on the wall up there. They also had a regional meeting at Chabot over in Oakland. And then the only other big trip I've made was to Austria to the eclipse in 90, when was that? 99. It just seems like yesterday, but that was another trip. So my next trip, I think, is going to be for the transit of Venus, coming June, and hopefully I'll be able to combine an Egypt trip, a Nile descent, with with looking at the transit of Venus one of the days. Yeah, so that should be a wonderful thing if it ever happens, comes over. Well, the other thing I do up there is absorb new stuff, which means I either get it, it's either given to me, or I build it, or somebody else builds it for me or something. But this is the telescope that Joel mentioned. It's a 16-inch f5.85 reflector, and as you can see, it's a Dobsonian kit that I bought from Telesystems. Anyway, a guy in Colorado makes a nice kit. Some of you probably have them. I can't remember his name. But you build it yourself, and you finish the wood and all that, and it comes out pretty good. Dave Bird helped me build it. And that was an old mirror that we had laying around from a group of us, and there may be one or two in the room that owned the 16-inch mirror, and it just laid in my garage for about the last 25 years. We had it out at the Elsinore site, when we had a site above Elsinore at one time. It got vandalized out there when somebody broke into the container it was in. And ever since then, it hasn't been used. So that was somewhere around 75. And until last year, it wasn't being used. It was just laying in a box. So I put it in a tube. The other thing is other telescopes that were recently, there was last May, there was this deluge of telescopes that landed in my front yard. That's a 16-inch Deep Sky 16, a Meade, that they had over at College of the Sequoias, which is another junior college over in Visalia. And the astronomy professor didn't want to wrestle with it anymore, so he just gave it to me. And I thought that was pretty nice. That's going to go down at a grade school education site we have just below me there. And this is Bill Kuhn's old 6-inch Maksudov that he had for 3 or 4 years, and I'm using that for doing occultation work. Things where you have to go travel and then set the telescope up and then try to observe a star going under an asteroid or something. This seems to work pretty good for that, so I've used that. Wolfie does sometimes come up in the recliner and he does think he's a lapdog, but of course he's a German Shepherd. He's much bigger than a lapdog, but that's okay. I do have about a 4-minute video that will show a little bit more of the observatory as it is today, and also there's some greetings at the end of it from some of my neighbors up there in Springville. So we're going to run that video now, and it will just be a moment while it leads up to it. This is also a a video that I showed at RTMC, I think. That's the view more or less from my house over toward the observatory. And the folks that were there first built this thing, I call it the park, because it looks rather like a little park. But here's the observatory. Well, hi, welcome to Starhome. Come on in, I'll give you a quick tour. Jim, I can't do anything about this. I had the stereo on. Runs around. Jeez. Can we turn that down any? It's awfully loud. Well, anyway.
Yes, there's a little bathroom.
Southern Milky Way view. You can ponder the imponderable.
I see how you can sleep so long. You got the window blacked out.
There are a couple of guest rooms like this. Oh yeah, Marines just stay sitting. It won't last long enough. Generally Marines stand up for this, but. Could have zoomed out at Monsignor's place, right out the window there. There it is, right, sort of in the middle. Yeah, okay, that's it. That's so loud. You can't do anything about it, can you? Yeah. Sorry about that. Audio, it's got out of control. I have these chains that hold the roof on in case of a little wind or something, you know. James is unhooking the chains. Now, there's dropping the thing. It don't drop too hard. There's one of the weights over there. There's 35 pounds on each end that come up. And that's looking straight south down towards Springville again. So there's a C-14 and a 6-inch refractor, Astrophys. Sorry, the editing at the end of this gets a little rough because I just added it last night, actually. This speaking engagement came on a little sudden, you know. I don't know what happened there. Anyway, I got a Lost Mandy go-to. It's a very nice mount. It's called the Titan. Comes with a 92-page manual you have to digest before you can move it. Here's a new bookcase. This is a bookcase that Jim just built for me over the last 3 weeks. And I'm beginning to get a few books into it. Now here's the hellos. You have to, they're short.
Mom and I hope that someday you too can retire in style in a nice dark location, but still close enough to town and the amenities you need as a senior citizen. God bless.
That's Dave Bird with his new observatory.
And Billy, Columbia Spacecraft, welcome all of us to Springfield.
Can you cut that? That's it. Okay, so as you can see, there's lots of observatories up there. They're springing up like mushrooms, and it's really quite amazing. But it is a good place for amateur astronomers and amateur astronomy. So if you have any thoughts about coming up that way sometime, by all means, I'll hook you up with the realtor and she'll sell you another Starhome. No, we might be able to do something there. But there There aren't too many places like my site, but there's still lots of nice sites around there. In fact, we have a couple coming from Santa Clara that apparently are buying a 37-acre property with a house on it that will be up behind Monsignor Royer's place. They're both avid amateur astronomers also. And then Gene Mueller from the 200-inch, the night assistant at the 200-inch, has bought a piece of property up in Three Rivers, just above us, about 15 miles away. So we really have quite an astronomical community building up there. And we need more astronomers so we can, do better lobbying for light pollution control. And unless you want to see that shuttle thing, I'll just quit now. And shuttle. Yeah, it's still pretty early, isn't it? I've only managed to go about an hour or so. All right, here's the shuttle now. I did make a couple of copies here where it's more or less in slow motion, or a little bit slower anyway. This is actually after there was a luminous trail. This was after the path the shuttle had gone over the mountains down here. It left a luminous trail, which I think is normal. Of course, I'd never seen a shuttle reentry, so I didn't realize anything was going wrong. Okay, here we are. I think we're about half speed now. So it's going through trees. That's why you're seeing it going kind of on and off. Now the flash event happens after it does, right there. It does sort of a little loop, and then some stuff comes out the back, and then this piece detaches. And the piece they're still looking for it. It's over in Utah somewhere, out in the boonies. So I had the time on it and everything, which was good. That's not the right time, by the way. It was 2 minutes and 38 seconds less than that time. So I corrected the clock after I took the picture. Because I just didn't think this would be very important. I just thought it would be interesting. But I think what NASA liked about it was the fact that I tracked along with it, because several of the videos I've seen by other people, it just goes through the field, and they didn't track with it, And here I'm tracking with it, which they kind of like. And by the way, in a dark screen, you can actually see that piece still trailing behind and sort of dropping. It was apparently a flat panel of some sort back that came off. Something fairly sizable, I would think. We didn't know, I don't know what it was. So I don't know if they've ever identified what it was, but it was a flat panel of some kind. Now it's going through the trees, and it never got above about 30 degrees in the sky, so that was the best horizon I had. And it did manage to get through some trees before it went behind the, when it disappears, will have gone behind the mountain. So it was really only visible for 15 or 20 seconds at the most. Anyway, I'm glad I finally showed this tape to you guys, because it's been a long time since that happened, and it's never been shown except on little bits of it on TV. I guess one more time, okay? All right, going through the trees, it'll go up high. When it comes back to the left, you'll see the flash. It brightens about 2 or 3 times when the flash happens. Nobody's explained that flash yet. Right now it's up. Okay, here we come to the flash. See, there's a flash and then there's some stuff. So what I think, maybe that was the first breach of something, maybe the hole in the wing, and then maybe this is a piece of something that came off right after that. And they did a lot of analyses to try to figure out how fast that piece was falling and where it fell. They came up with a footprint, an ellipse over in Utah, in western Utah. And I presume they looked over there, but I'm pretty sure they didn't find it. There was about 3 or 4 groups that actually did an analysis of the falling of that piece and where it would fall. They were all slightly different, but they were pretty close. So you can see 1 second less several here. It's at least half speed, probably more like a quarter speed. And that's what the to-do was about. It wasn't really that much to do, but I only got it because I went out early in the morning and because I'd seen it on the internet. And I'd never seen a re-entry of a shuttle before, so that's really, I was curious about what it would look like. I was just tracking through the, I was on a tripod, but I was just tracking. This is about 15 power, 15x zoom. I was just tracking it through the viewfinder of the camera. Pardon? The zoom lens on the camera.
John, I think everybody's interested in hearing what transpired immediately after that, how you got to find out what had happened.
Oh yeah. On my original tape, after I shot the last shot showing the trail, I walked in the house and I had the NASA channel on, which I get on my satellite. I'd had the NASA channel on, it was still on, and right at that point it was about 6 o'clock or a few minutes after 6, and nothing was happening. It was, the control room was very quiet, and the narrator said something about the fact that they weren't getting a radar echo from Merritt Island, which I think is in the Gulf someplace or somewhere near Houston. And they usually get the data so they can tell the pilot, you know, you're right on track or whatever. But they weren't getting any radar returns. So at about 12 after 6, the thing was supposed to land at 6:16. It was supposed to actually touch down, and they weren't getting any returns from the radar. And it got really quiet in that control room. You could hear a pin drop. And the guy says, the directors declared a contingency. So everybody's flipping their charts, contingency, contingency. What's that mean? Well, it was just quiet there for about 5 more minutes, and then the video came in from that TV station in Dallas. Fireballs, you know. I mean, the thing is re-entering in pieces, right? Everybody's seen that video over and over. I just sat there and I couldn't believe it. I was stunned. And I knew I had something. So eventually that day, later in that day, I contacted NASA. They set up a phone line for witnesses to call in. So I finally called in and sent them the tape on Monday, and they got it Tuesday, and they called back and thanked me. And they got about probably 7 or 8 different tapes from amateurs like myself who had gotten up and seen the thing go over. So they have pretty good video coverage as well as radar coverage, surprising. I didn't know that. But they have pretty good coverage from when it crossed the coast all the way to Texas when it was in pieces. So they could piece together a pretty nearly continuous video the whole way. So I was just one observer out of the 6 or 8 amateurs that photographed the thing. Well, yeah, the flash was at 5:53 something, and that's apparently when they lost voice contact. So that may have been an antenna giving away or something that would stop them from communicating. They were still getting some data, telemetry, yeah, that's the word. But they weren't getting any voice after that. So that's the only thing. And on the track, in the report, they finally sent me about an inch thick report on, they called early visual evidence or something to that effect. There is a track that they have, and it's by the second. And by the way, the thing was going Mach 22, and it was at about 230,000 feet when this stuff started to happen. So it was still going awfully fast. But other than that, I haven't heard a lot about what they concluded from it, except what's in the regular, the accident report.
John, isn't your videotape actually the first one that showed any kind of anomaly?
Well, I don't know, Matt. The one other one I saw, and I only saw it on the web, so it wasn't a very good picture, shows it was taken from Reno, and it shows Venus, and it shows the shuttle coming down, and it actually shows that little flash and the event, but it came right down through. He didn't track it at all. So it's at a kind of a small scale. But that event was certainly one of the first ones that happened after it started to do what it was going to do. Yeah. Yeah, Jim?
You made the copies of the tape before you sent it to NASA?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, did they come back to you later on after that and then confiscate the camera or anything like that? Tell me that story.
No, they bought my camera. They decided that they were going to get all the cameras from all the guys who did the videos and try to, what they said was they were going to try to characterize the chip in each camera so that maybe they could tell something like where that flash happens and the stuff comes out. Maybe from the different chips and the different spectral areas that the chips would be sensitive to, they might be able to tell what the stuff was, whether it was aluminum, steel, carbon fiber, whatever. I don't know. That's my supposition, that why they wanted the camera. So I sent them the camera, and they just reimbursed me for what I...
Did you, when you sent them the tape, did you tell them what the time correction was on the...
Yeah. It's actually on the tape, like you saw it there. Yeah. It's actually there, and I told them what the correction was. 2 minutes and 38 seconds, which I got the next morning off WWV. So it's probably within a second. Their timing was within a second, and they got the timing of the flash from the various different people, and maybe the radar even could see that, I don't know. So between a bunch of different radars, like traffic control radars and so on, they have very good radar coverage of the whole trip until it fell apart, I think. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff in those accident reports. I mean, they're inches thick, and I haven't read them that thoroughly, but they did send me the report. So I have it at home. Any other questions? Well, thanks for being so patient. Appreciate it.
Tim Hogle brought a couple of copies of the report.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about timely.
Uh-huh.
On Columbia. We'll have it down here at the front. Please don't remove them. These are something that he got in, you might say, the course and scope of his employment, so to speak. Anyway, he needs to take at least one of them back, but he said that he would kindly donate one to our library so that people can look at that in the future.
Yeah.
But we'll have it down here at the front, so if you want to come down during the break and take a look, please do.
Thank you, John. That was a great presentation. What a comfortable place to observe from. Now don't forget, you can attend our meetings yourself. They are held usually on the second Friday of every month at Chapman University in Orange at 7:30 p.m. See you there. And if you would like to visit the OCA's observatory, we do open the site to invited members of the public. All you have to do is ask. You can send your request to lookuptonight@ocastronomers.org, and we'll love to arrange a visit for you. Well, that's it for this show. Now, just get out there and look up tonight.